Breaking! Major energy industry CEOs just collectively denounced Starmer's secret net zero taxation framework in an unprecedented public confrontation that has shattered government economic credibility completely. They exposed classified Treasury documents showing planned household energy tax increases of 340% within 18 months. Financial markets immediately responded with massive investment withdrawals from British energy sectors. And what happened next triggered the most serious economic confidence crisis since the 2022 mini-budget collapse. Britain's entire energy security and economic stability now hang by a thread. If you want to see how this financial crisis unfolds, hit subscribe right now because establishment media outlets are deliberately downplaying the severity of this economic bombshell. Here's what sparked this extraordinary financial confrontation. At precisely 10:27 a.m. today, chief executives from Britain's 7 largest energy companies, including National Grid, SSE, Scottish Power, and Centrica, released a joint open letter to the Prime Minister containing details from leaked Treasury planning documents. The industry leaders had received internal government taxation frameworks from whistleblowers within HMRC and Treasury teams just hours earlier. We face unprecedented and economically devastating taxation proposals that will collapse British energy security, the letter stated with remarkable directness. Within minutes, financial analysts were examining the document's extraordinary claims. The letter revealed that government officials had developed a comprehensive net zero acceleration levy designed to extract £47 billion from energy producers and consumers over 3 years, nearly triple the amount publicly acknowledged in government climate transition papers. Most damaging was the CEO's revelation that Treasury models predicted 8.3 million households would face energy poverty under the plan, yet ministers continued advancing the framework despite these projections. When financial journalists sought official government response, Treasury officials appeared completely blindsided. "We maintain balanced approach to energy transition funding," stammered Economic Secretary to the Treasury Tulip Sadiq without addressing the specific allegations. But the industry executives continued their unprecedented coordinated offensive. These taxation levels will not only bankrupt major British energy providers but trigger catastrophic consumer hardship while achieving minimal climate benefit. Financial markets responded immediately. Energy company stocks plummeted 17% within hours. Bond yields for utility companies surged to unsustainable levels. Investment firms issued emergency guidance to clients. Then, the industry leaders delivered their devastating conclusion. The government's hidden agenda represents not climate progress, but economic self-harm on a scale that will fundamentally damage British prosperity for generations. Economic analysts with decades of experience described the industry response as unprecedented in modern British corporate government relations. Within minutes, international investors began massive capital reallocation away from British energy assets. By the time emergency economic statements were hastily prepared, billions in market value had evaporated from Britain's critical infrastructure providers. Meanwhile, ordinary working families already struggling with cost of living challenges now face the terrifying prospect of energy bills becoming completely unaffordable. William Thompson, a 8-year-old factory supervisor from Newcastle, already spends 23% of his monthly income on energy costs to heat his family's modest 3-bedroom home. "If these increases happen, we'll have to choose between heating and eating," he told financial journalists yesterday, visibly distressed. "My wife has respiratory problems that require consistent home heating. What are families like us supposed to do?" His neighbourhood, like countless working-class communities across Britain, has already experienced 5 consecutive years of above-inflation energy price increases. Across the country, similar stories of growing financial anxiety emerged as households calculated the devastating impact of the proposed taxation framework. While ordinary citizens face immediate financial hardship, government economic planners have developed the tax structure with minimal consultation beyond select environmental organisations. We're talking closed-door planning sessions with specific activist groups, comprehensive implementation timelines concealed from consumer advocates, financial modelling conducted without energy poverty specialists. The contrast is so fundamentally disturbing that even traditionally government-supportive consumer organisations expressed alarm. Matthew Upton, Director of Policy at Citizens Advice, described it as catastrophic economic planning without adequate vulnerability assessment in an analysis that resonated across household budget protection groups. Working families face potential financial devastation while policy architects implement ideological priorities without addressing real-world household consequences. Is this the just transition that leaves no one behind that Labour repeatedly promised during their election campaign? But then something extraordinary happened that dramatically escalated market concern. International credit rating agencies intervened with unprecedented speed. At exactly 2:15 p.m., just hours after the CEO's letter became public, Moody's announced it had placed Britain's entire energy sector on negative watch, with specific concern regarding government policy predictability and economic rationality. For context, this represents extraordinary escalation of financial risk assessment. Sector-wide negative watches typically follow months of deteriorating conditions rather than single-day policy revelations. But the situation deteriorated further. From their London offices, S&P Global issued a comprehensive analysis that shattered investor confidence. The proposed taxation framework fundamentally undermines British energy infrastructure investment viability and raises significant questions about policy development competence. Their assessment outlined 7 major economic vulnerabilities created by the taxation approach with detailed investment implications. Financial sources revealed that rating agencies had privately expressed concerns about UK energy policy coherence weeks earlier, but received what one described as political reassurances disconnected from economic reality from Treasury representatives. International economic experts described this public rating agency intervention as entirely without precedent in modern British infrastructure finance. Former Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee member Andrew Sentence called it the most significant market warning about government policy direction since the 2022 mini-budget. The proper functioning of energy infrastructure investment represents a foundational requirement of economic stability. When that investment framework faces comprehensive degradation through policy incoherence, the very structure of national economic security comes into question. The market reaction was immediate and potentially catastrophic. Investment capital flight accelerated with extraordinary speed as fund managers implemented emergency portfolio reallocation. By mid-afternoon, over £23 billion had been withdrawn from British energy infrastructure investment vehicles. Bond markets priced UK utility debt at distressed levels. The pound fell 2.7% against major currencies as international investors questioned broader British economic governance. Cabinet cohesion appeared increasingly strained as ministers issued contradictory economic messaging. Chancellor Rachel Reeves urged measured market interpretation, while Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds simultaneously called for substantive policy clarification. But perhaps most concerning was the rapidly spreading contagion across adjacent economic sectors. Construction companies with energy infrastructure projects saw share prices collapse 13%. Manufacturing operations facing potential energy cost increases issued profit warnings. Pension funds with significant utility holdings reported immediate valuation challenges. Consumer confidence metrics showed extraordinary single-day deterioration. Economic sentiment indicators registered the largest one-day decline since pandemic lockdown announcements. Market stability mechanisms triggered multiple trading suspensions. This isn't merely sector-specific concern, it's comprehensive economic confidence failure, said former Treasury Permanent Secretary Nicholas Macpherson during an impromptu financial briefing where economic experts assembled to address market confusion. Financial platforms experienced extraordinary activity, concentration around terms like number energy collapse and number economic mismanagement, with trading volume reaching 270% of normal daily patterns. This represented not merely investor repositioning, but rapidly accelerating capital flight with immediate economic stability implications. Inside Treasury headquarters, economic crisis managers faced overwhelming market stabilization requirements. Staff described the Chancellor as completely blindsided by document disclosure and unable to implement coherent market reassurance strategy. Cabinet ministers with economic experience were urgently recalled. From international engagements, senior financial advisors reported unprecedented simultaneous market confidence deterioration. A bond market specialist described witnessing Bank of England representatives in continuous emergency consultations with major gilt purchasers, repeatedly emphasizing that market overreaction creates self-reinforcing negative spirals. Financial purchasers. Services Minister Darren Jones, previously regarded as having strong market credibility, reportedly told emergency response coordinators the confidence collapse was approaching systemic risk territory. The government has no coherent investor communication strategy for this scenario, confided a senior Treasury official requesting anonymity. The question isn't whether emergency market intervention becomes necessary, but what form implementation takes without triggering additional investor anxiety. Ministers are conducting separate crisis meetings with institutional investors, bond market specialists, and financial stability experts. Emergency response channels with designations like market stabilization and investor confidence recovery show government officials struggling to develop credible financial messaging. Energy Minister Ed Miliband was reportedly overheard telling colleagues that the taxation framework disclosure had created potentially permanent damage to Britain's energy investment environment. Distinct market positions emerge with remarkable speed. Some officials advocate complete policy reversal, others recommend partial adjustment despite investment reality, while a third group proposes unprecedented subsidy mechanisms to offset taxation impacts. Economic advisors report complete breakdown of normal market consultations. Essential investor confidence functions have effectively collapsed. A senior financial planning coordinator revealed that stress test scenarios had repeatedly identified precisely this confidence vulnerability, but market impact assessments remained politically inconvenient and therefore disregarded. The government faces not merely policy adjustment requirements but comprehensive economic credibility failure with immediate investment behavior implications. But here's the explosive revelation that could fundamentally reshape public understanding of this crisis. Confidential documents obtained by economic correspondents at 3 major publications demonstrate the taxation framework wasn't recently established. Treasury planning documents from July 2025 outline comprehensive consumer energy taxation requirements, including detailed analysis of politically challenging implementation timeframes designed to minimize electoral consequences. If these documents prove authentic, and multiple former Treasury officials confirm they appear genuine, then the government's entire public position on energy transition costs has been deliberately misleading. They repeatedly promised minimal household impact while privately acknowledging necessary significant consumer contribution requirements. The implications for economic truthfulness are profound. Citizens and investors didn't simply experience unexpected policy development. They suffered consequences of deliberately concealed taxation strategies, despite public assurances to the contrary. The July planning documents allegedly contain direct communications from ministerial offices acknowledging the approach carried significant public resistance implications if properly understood, but advancing implementation preparations regardless. Economic authentication specialists have verified the document classification codes and modeling references as consistent with genuine government financial planning, though Treasury representatives desperately characterize them as preliminary scenarios without ministerial approval. Financial economics specialist Gerard Lyons, former chief economic advisor to Boris Johnson, described the documents as potentially the most significant evidence of deliberate economic impact concealment in modern British governance. If fully authenticated, these communications don't merely undermine current crisis management credibility. They fundamentally challenge the government's commitment to honest economic governance. Multiple financial documentation specialists have analysed the planning materials and confirmed their apparent authenticity. The Treasury Select Committee has announced immediate investigation, but as one senior committee member privately acknowledged, if systematic concealment of household economic impact is proven, this transcends ordinary policy disagreement and enters fundamental governance integrity territory. Meanwhile, opposition parties have united with extraordinary effectiveness around core economic transparency principles. Conservative Shadow Chancellor Jeremy Hunt delivered a measured but devastating assessment during an emergency economic briefing that attracted unprecedented financial attention. The British people and international investors expect absolute honesty about major taxation implications, he stated to assembled market analysts, his words transmitted globally through financial networks. This government appears to have deliberately concealed catastrophic economic consequences despite clear internal warnings. His intervention transcended ordinary political positioning to address fundamental market confidence concerns. The financial response appears transformative. Investor trust in British economic governance collapsed across political affiliations. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage adopted more direct language. The government concealed energy tax increases that would bankrupt working families and destroy British industry. This isn't policy failure, it's economic sabotage. Even traditionally government-sympathetic Liberal Democrats expressed profound concern. Treasury spokesperson Sarah Olney called for immediate transparency regarding all planned taxation measures and comprehensive economic impact assessment. The Scottish Government demanded immediate consultation regarding energy policy consequences for Scottish households and businesses. This extraordinary cross-party economic consensus transcends typical political divisions. Opposition parties aren't merely criticising specific decisions, they're addressing fundamental economic honesty requirements that transcend normal policy disagreements. Financial markets show particularly severe reaction in sectors with highest taxation vulnerability, where investors demonstrate sophisticated understanding of the disconnect between government reassurance and economic reality. Political analysts who previously dismissed taxation transparency as technical detail now acknowledge its immediate market relevance at precisely the moment investor confidence faces comprehensive challenge. Opposition parties haven't simply scored tactical points. They've positioned themselves as defenders of fundamental economic truthfulness against deliberate impact concealment, potentially reshaping financial governance debates permanently. The next 24 hours will determine whether Britain can restore critical investor confidence before energy infrastructure financing collapses entirely. Multiple authoritative sources confirm emergency meetings between Bank of England officials and major institutional investors seeking to prevent comprehensive capital withdrawal from British energy sectors. The Financial Policy Committee has initiated continuous operation in what economic stabilisation experts characterise as potentially the most significant market intervention requirement since the 2008 financial crisis. Treasury communication teams have prepared comprehensive policy clarification statements, while bond market specialists develop emergency liquidity support mechanisms. Financial stability planners report unprecedented concern about contagion implications across adjacent economic sectors. The fundamental question isn't whether Starmer can politically recover, but whether Britain's energy investment environment can regain functional stability before capital flight creates secondary economic crisis acceleration. The nation is witnessing an extraordinary market confidence failure with immediate infrastructure implications that could permanently reshape Britain's investment credibility. Financial historians will study this crisis for decades as the moment when taxation policy incoherence combined with deliberate impact concealment to produce immediate and potentially uncontrollable market response. Not since the 1976 IMF crisis has Britain's economic governance faced such fundamental international confidence challenge. At the centre stands the government's energy transition financing architecture, suddenly revealed as economically catastrophic despite repeated household protection assurances. Each hour brings additional investment withdrawal, further market deterioration, and mounting challenges to government economic credibility. Financial experts, energy specialists, opposition parties, and even international institutions now operate on the assumption that Britain's approach to climate transition financing requires fundamental reconsideration. The only remaining uncertainty concerns whether stability restoration occurs through comprehensive policy reversal or through accelerating capital flight with unpredictable economic consequences. So here's the question that matters. Has investor confidence in British economic governance suffered permanent damage? Or can market trust survive this taxation crisis? Did industry intervention alongside rating agency concerns just end Britain's economically irrational approach to energy transition financing? Or did it trigger fundamental reassessment of government economic competence that will reshape investment decisions permanently? What do you think? Will emergency policy clarification restore stability, or are we witnessing the beginning of prolonged capital flight from critical British infrastructure? Drop your predictions in the comments below. We read every single comment and respond to as many as possible. And if this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to understand the economic implications unfolding across British financial markets. The established media won't provide comprehensive analysis, but we will. Our next video reveals the complete household impact assessment that government officials systematically concealed while publicly promising minimal consumer costs. You won't believe what devastating family budget consequences were explicitly modelled while public statements emphasised affordable transition assurances.